Good morning and thank you very much for joining us. I am Mayori Folari. Talk about a difficult subject. I say difficult because for most of us, inflation makes life difficult. And so it's a difficult subject. One of the inflation doctors that we have on our program here, you know, our very own Dr. Muda Yusuf. He's an economist. He's CEO Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. But I find that somehow coincidentally, when the inflation goes up, we reach for Dr. Yusuf. And so, Dr. Yusuf, they now say the figure is 32.70%. This is coming from September. And this has sort of surprised, I imagine, maybe not surprised economists because they know a lot of how to interpret these things. But ordinary people would have thought that, there were 2 months in there where things were going down. And we're hoping that, let it just be like that. And then suddenly we now have this, 32.70. It's worrying, but how worrying is it in the overall picture?
No, it is very worrying because when you listen to the cries of the average Nigerian and the complaints by a lot of businesses, it's all about the high cost of living, and the high cost of doing business.
Yes. Is that linked to the interest rate?
Yes, interest rate, exchange rate, energy cost, so many factors are responsible for this. So it has been a major issue, and that is why a lot of, many of us, including the citizens generally, have been looking forward to some mitigation measures, because the factors driving inflation have not been effectively subdued, despite all the efforts by the central bank.
I was going to say that.
Yes, the central bank has been increasing interest rates, mopping up, doing all sorts of things, also struggling with the FX market, but yet the inflation has remained rather stubborn.
What is responsible, Dr. Yusuf, for this persistence of the strength of inflation?
No, the point is that, what we are seeing in terms of prices or inflation is a symptom.
Okay.
It's like an effect.
Okay.
Now we need to look at it within the context of the causal factors. What are the factors driving it? If you don't deal or have a good handle on issues of exchange rates, because the fact is that the economy is highly sensitive to exchange rate movements.
Okay.
And you can see that in the last few weeks or even 1 month or so, we are beginning to see some form of pressure, or renewed pressure on exchange rates. Our parallel market rate is moving now even close to 1,007, and to the extent that we maintain the policy of this convergence, that wherever the parallel market is going, the official rate has to follow.
Okay.
That is an issue.
By the way, Doctor, are we still working with official rate, parallel rate? I thought there was supposed to be a unified rate. Wasn't that supposed to be an innovation by the government?
No. The whole essence of the reform is to ensure that the gap between the parallel rate and the official rate
is negligible.
Is negligible.
But that hasn't been
So what is happening now is that each time the parallel market rate or the BDC rate, because there is no difference really between the two of them, is depreciating, what you tend to see is that the official rate will be adjusted to match up, so that the margin will be very negligible in order to avoid this problem of round tripping. And that is the main essence of the reform. But whether that is working well for us as an economy is something that is debatable. Because we are seeing the impact of this, because it's essentially trying to ensure that the forex is entirely, completely market-driven. That is the whole essence of it. And for a market that you cannot say this is exactly a very good market. It is a market that is riddled with a lot of imperfections.
Okay.
And when you are operating within that framework, we need to be careful how we, surrender the whole system, or we leave the whole system to markets. So that is the worry that some of us have, especially when you look at the impact of foreign exchange on practically everything.
Everything.
So they need to effectively manage it. People have used all sorts of terms. They say it's guiding the exchange rate or managing the float, whatever it is. There's a need to effectively manage it to ensure that the impact that it's having on prices is minimal.
I'm happy, Dr. Yusuf, that you said that this is happening in spite of all that the central bank governor and has thrown at it. So my worry is that even when it was doing as it is still doing all that it is doing, things are said to be tight. And I think I heard the CBN say in its own kind of language that this is the way things need to be. Things need to be, quote unquote, tight. We can't leave them too loose because it will have an impact on the very subject of this conversation. But surely one often hears, we got to tighten our belts, we got to tighten our belts. It gets to a stage where there are no more notches. There are no more notches on the belt with which to tighten. Yes. And we can't say the CBN doesn't know what it is doing, it doesn't know what it's about. So it's in the marketplace that all of this is being caused, right? Is it?
Yes.
Is that the situation?
No. The point is that for somebody who is supposed to manage a particular policy environment, you can only use the instruments at your disposal.
Okay.
To deal with the problem. Now, the primary function of the central bank is to ensure price stability. And the instruments at the disposal of the central bank are this instrument that it has been using. That is tightening of monetary policy. Using the instruments of the monetary policy rate, instruments of the cash reserve ratio, instruments of the liquidity ratio, instruments of the asymmetric corridor. These are the instruments available to the central bank. Unfortunately, the structure of the economy is not such that those instruments can easily deliver the desired outcomes.
Okay.
Because this economy is unlike what you have in the Western economies, where the economy is driven largely by credit. Practically everybody is carrying credit card. So if the government wants to slow down the demand, they increase interest rates so that the demand for credit will drop. Mm-hmm. But in this environment, how many people have credit cards? How many people have access to credit? How many people can even approach the bank for credit, even at these very crazy interest rates? So we need to, for me, I think we need to relate to the peculiarities of the environment in which we are. And we need to reduce this. There should not be too much of knowledge dependence. That this is the way the World Bank has said we should do. I'm not saying the World Bank recommendation and IMF are not good, but we need to occasionally interrogate those prescriptions.
It's interesting you mentioned them.
Yes.
Because I was reading the news headline, an item, that the country director for the World Bank has said that Nigeria should just hold fast to its position. The worst thing it can do now is to reverse it because there is an outcry for such. But it was just chipping in its own that, well, the way Nigeria has done, please don't even ever think of changing course.
You see, even I listened to the chief economist of the World Bank at the Economic Summit Group. When he mentioned that Nigeria should stay the course for the next 10 to 15 years, you could see the response from the audience. These are even elites who should understand better. So the man was wondering that, what have I said wrong?
Oh.
And the concern really was that because of the challenges that the reform has imposed, it is not appropriate, or it's not the right thing to hear that you should remain in this course for the next 15 years. And I think what is missing, actually, it's not as if the reforms in themselves are bad. But, it's like when you are going through a therapy, there's a way you undertake the therapy in a way that is as painless as it can be. Because we are dealing with a problem, it's a cumulative problem.
Yeah.
This problem has been there for the past 30, even 40 years. You can't solve it in 1 year. You can't solve it in 2 years. To take us out of it,
Exactly.
it has to be gradual.
Well, that's why that man was suggesting 10 to 15 years stay the course.
But stay the course. Well, the challenge people have now is that the current course in which we are, is the burden is a lot.
It is.
So what we need to be doing is to be relieving it, not necessarily to abandon the reforms, but to come up with measures, because most of these policies are not heavy enough on the social content of the policies.
Okay.
The social content.
Yes.
We are just looking at the macros, looking at the aggregate GDP, blah, blah, blah.
And all of that.
We are not looking at the social indicators. That is where the problem is. And when the World Bank was even delivering the lecture, it was also not very robust enough on the social intervention aspect of it.
It's like everybody's looking away from that side.
Yes.
Which can be quite explosive.
Which is what the citizens are complaining about.
It is.
Because the social cost is extremely very high. And I'm also even the political cost.
Of course.
It's also very high.
Well, that's why it was left, it was abandoned for so long.
Yes.
They didn't want to grapple with the political cost.
So anybody that is jumping into it also needs to be very careful to ensure the moderation of this social costs, to ensure the moderation of even the political costs.
And even
because you have to be in government to be able to carry on with the reforms.
That's right.
Now, if you have a situation where the reform is now leaving so many people behind, and people are feeling that this thing is getting, too much. Is the government not sensitive to what we are feeling? It's also not good enough. So that is why I am hoping that what the government is doing now, because government is now shifting focus from these monetary policy instruments to fiscal policy instruments. That's why the government is now coming up with this economic stabilization plan. It's a very comprehensive plan, and the fiscal policy content of those plans is very heavy. Although it's still some elements of it will require some legislation, because it's around issues of taxation.
Exactly.
It's around issues of import duty tariffs. Those two things can have some immediate relief.
Exactly. And I'm sure you are aware that I saw some news story that Ghana was actually making waves in this regard.
Yes,
it was dropping all sorts of VATs,
dropping
all sorts of taxation.
Yes, taxation.
And that's one thing that we still have very, very high here.
No, it's too high.
As we're being pursued by these policies that we have to endure, government is also continuing with its own quote-unquote pound of flesh in the form of taxation.
That is what we need to watch out for.
Yeah.
Taxation and import duty, particularly import duty.
Import duty, especially.
Import duty is too high. You cannot have an economy with this kind of weak currency, and at the same time you have very high import duty.
You mean a more concerted approach than what we've heard in recent times, that as it relates to health, the health sector, government is taking away some, taxes and VATs and all of that, but on the raw materials.
On the raw materials and medical equipment.
And medical equipment.
Yes, that is the way to go. But my worry with that is about implementation.
Okay. Again.
Now, this policy was announced in June. This is October. Up to about last week or 2 weeks ago, the policy has not been implemented. So sometimes you wonder what exactly is going on. Exactly. Because the spirit with which those things were announced was to immediately begin to cushion the effects of these policies.
You're very right, Dr. Yusuf.
Then these things were announced, and this thing was stuck in the bureaucracy.
So these are the areas that we're going to have to look at.
There was also the one on food. Temporary waiver on importation of import duty on food items, paddy rice. It's paddy rice, so not just rice, because some people felt that it is rice that government said they should be imported. No. It is paddy rice that the rice millers will now process. That is what the government is focusing on, which is the right thing to do. Then we have maize and wheat and all of that. Now, this is supposed to be effective July 15th. It's supposed to be for 150 days. As at 2 days ago, when I spoke to some stakeholders in that sector, the policy is yet to be implemented. So these are issues, and these are very serious issues, I must say.
Very, very. And,
government needs to interrogate this because the president means well. The president is sensitive to all these pains.
But
how can
the implementation?
The president announce a policy supposed to be effective July 15th. This is October. We are getting to end of October.
I think the very obvious thing is what needs to be reiterated, that there need to be timelines. Since when the announcement was made, I don't know, there has to be some office in the presidency somewhere where they're looking at what's going on a weekly basis or maybe a monthly basis, where we should be, where we are now. Because once those policy decisions are announced, that seems to be the end of it. And talking of which, we're talking about one of the other ways that they lure that we tend to look at inflation is what has happened to the value of money. The simplistic explanation that economists have given us is that a million naira, before the inflation, a million naira in your bank account, let's say 2 years ago, is actually, the value of it is actually less now, right? That same 1 million naira. You're looking at that figure, it hasn't changed. It has. Now, I wanted to ask you, even though it's a bit out of our scope, I was also reading that Nigeria's richest man, Aliko Dangote, he's bounced back into the ratings by all these business magazines rating them. He's now doubled his fortune, it is reported. Doubled his fortune from around 13-point-something billion naira to 28 billion naira. So I was wondering.
Is it naira or dollars?
You see, I'm in Nigeria. I'm so sorry. I'm in Nigeria. Sorry, Aliko Dangote. Sorry, it's billions of dollars. So he's now being reported by all those magazines, Forbes and all the business magazines, that his fortune has doubled. Now, how does this play? Because look at us. Everybody is complaining. And I've just told you about the ordinary man understands that the value of his money is going down once the inflation gets in on it. How is it that Dangote is being sort of, quote-unquote, protected in the sense that his 13-point-something billion naira has not gone up to $28 billion, I beg your pardon?
I think I think it has to do with investment. The value of his assets.
Even though they wrote the story around the largest refinery in the world being Dangote's.
Yes, exactly. What has made the difference is this Dangote refinery that has now come stream. And I think it has to do a lot more with the assets, the value of the assets.
Okay, composite.
Yes, composite. It's not as if the man is carrying 20-something billion in his bank account.
Okay,
no.
Okay.
It's about the value. What is he worth? As a person. That is what it is. But generally, I think in terms of the value of money, is something, because it's part of the things that is also affecting the currency. We have people now who, once they have their naira, they go and buy dollar to keep. And they believe that is the best way to store their wealth. Some of these things also put pressure. And it's a question of, ensuring that we restore confidence in the currency.
What you just said is what some commentators I don't know where their evidence is, are accusing the governors of doing. The excess or additional funds going to the states are allegedly, without any proof whatsoever being presented, are said to be going through this whole business that they take this, convert it to dollars, and sit on it, and meanwhile, the society keeps on complaining that we're not even seeing anything. Even as we are suffering and we're now getting more, because we've freed up that whole, what is this thing called? That whole subsidy thing. So you're getting more. We are not seeing it. And so you hear commentary about, go and ask your governors. Leave Aso Rock alone.
Yes, the governors have a whole lot of role to play. But again, You are right. Quite a number of subsidies have been taken up. Even those of us who are economists. There were some assumptions that we also had, which experience has now shown that those assumptions were not valid.
Okay.
One of those assumptions before the first subsidy removal was that the poor were not benefiting from the first subsidy. We have since realized that
maybe that was an overstatement.
Yes, that assumption was not actually. We now know that the poor were benefiting from the first subsidy.
Yes.
Because when you now saw the removal and we now saw the impact on the poor,
yes,
we now knew that that assumption is not exactly very correct. Then the other assumption that even the foreign exchange subsidy, because what we are dealing with is also a case of subsidy in forex. That those who are benefiting from the forex subsidy are those who are round tripping and all of that. When the subsidy was taken away through this flotation, we now saw the impact on the people.
Again.
That no, the people too are benefiting from this subsidy.
Let me bring in DK. Good morning, DK in Jos. Good morning.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Good morning to your guest there.
Thank you. Dr. Muda Yusuf.
Good morning to your guest there. Okay. Okay, I overheard Dr. Muda Yusuf saying that the president meant well, and I want to disagree with him.
Let's hear it.
If you pass an instruction and you did not monitor the instruction, even in an ordinary office, the GM gave instruction, you don't want to know whether the instruction has been carried out and who's supposed to carry it out. That is one thing. And again, see what we are doing in the country now. What the president is doing is not going to lead us anywhere. There will be no improvement in this economy. This theory Dr. Muda Yusuf is quoting there can only work if there is production in this country. I overheard Central Bank Governor one day said, and I agree with him, that if he does anything without production, that is not going to work. Central Bank cannot perform magic. They can only do to an extent if we are producing. And there is no how you run a country, 100% importation, that will work. So what we are doing is still part of what the past government, those we are blaming now. That is exactly, even we are doing worse than them. The World Bank that is advising the president to remove subsidy, why can't they advise him to start production? If we liberalize the refinery now, if the three refineries begin to work, let there be competition, you will see that our naira will pick up a little. But why should you continue importing? And you expect us that nothing is going to work. And look at taxation everywhere. Even the free TV where you people were operating before, although I don't know whether it is true, that they say the president said the TV stations there should pay. All of them move out of that place. And this is where the poor people pay and listen to the news. Why must we be taxed to the extent that people want to die? Me, I'm a worker now. But my salary, do you know that my salary cannot carry me to my place of work in a month, come back?
All right, then. Well, thank you very much, DK, for calling in. Really appreciate your call. Yeah, Dr. Yusuf, those factors that you mentioned.
Yeah, it's a very valid point that you made. There is what we call import substitution. It's also part of the strategy to get us out of this challenge. And what that strategy means is that whatever we are currently importing, as much as possible, we should be substituting with domestic production. And one giant step that we have seen is this Dangote refinery. Because the biggest import bill that we are carrying today in terms of imports is importation of petroleum products.
Okay. Okay.
Sometimes it can be up to $10 billion annually. So if with this initiative, with this Dangote refinery, if it gets the right kind of support, and other refineries actually.
And that's a big if.
Yes, yes.
If he gets the right kind of support.
If he gets the
because
right
we've seen what we don't understand.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly.
sort of infighting in there.
Exactly. If he gets the right kind of support, that is a major step forward to what the caller was talking about. That if we're able to produce more, reliance on import will be less. But we need to create the environment for that production to happen. One of the issues we need to deal with, again, we are going back to forex. Because many of those people who are producing need one import content or the other. Even if it is 15% or 20% of import content. If you don't have it, you can't move forward with your production.
Yeah.
Even those who are exporting, they need some form of import content. I mean, we don't manufacture equipment here. There are quite a number of things that you don't manufacture here. And importation in itself, it's not as if it's an entirely bad idea. The way we run an economy is that as you import, you also offer something to the world.
And that has been where we have.
Yes, and to offer something to the world, you need to identify your area of what you call comparative advantage. We should ordinarily have serious comparative advantage in agriculture.
Ordinarily, yes.
Ordinarily. The world is looking for organic products. They are looking for organic products. And that is where we have, normally we should have very big strength.
And we have a rough idea of what is, mitigating against
the productivity.
productivity, agricultural produce, and all.
We have
of
a
that.
lot of strength even in this oil and gas.
Yes.
In gas investment, for instance.
Okay. One moment, sir. Evangelist Adeniyi in Abeokuta. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, sir. Well done, sir.
Okay, go right ahead, please.
I greet your guest there.
Dr. Yusuf, yes.
My own problem in this country is bad policies of this present government. Now, I see the World Bank as one of our problems. And the reason is this. When our leaders, our political leaders and Nigerians are borrowing money from them, they have given us a very hard policy in order to repay their money back. Now, they suggest that we should remove subsidy, and the subsidy is giving us hard time now. And we are not benefiting anything from the removal of the subsidy. The only thing we are seeing is that the revenue of the government is increasing and the people are suffering. People are suffering. Everything is tight. In fact, may God lead us throughout of this rubbish in this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That last word there, that rubbish, he said, may God, it shows his irritation. Evangelist, please be patient, sir. Let me take a break. We'll be right back, and we'll continue with Dr. Yusuf.